It's November 28th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. 11 more hostages, including 3-year-old twins, are now back in Israel. Qatar says Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 2-day extension to the current truce, with Hamas' commitment to freeing another 20 women and children over the next 2 days. We are less than 24 hours away from the voting that will name the host of the 2030 World Expo. South Korean delegates and business leaders led by Prime Minister Han Duck-soo are making a last-minute pitch in Paris on the eve of the voting to bring the 2030 edition to Busan City. North Korea claims its military spy satellite has taken photos of the White House, the Pentagon, and nuclear aircraft carriers docked at a U.S. naval base, while a UN Security Council meeting on North Korea's satellite launch ended with no conclusive result. The truce between Israel and Gaza has been extended for an additional 2 days. That is until Thursday morning Israel time. Now, under the agreement, 10 hostages will be released by Hamas each day. Our Choi Min-jung leads our coverage this morning.
The 4-day humanitarian pause in Gaza, which was set to end on Tuesday, has been extended for another 2 days. Qatar's foreign ministry confirmed the agreement on Monday without giving too much detail. A senior Israeli advisor said Hamas will release 10 hostages each day under the terms of the agreement. The White House said it welcomed the extension.
Now, in order to extend the pause, Hamas has committed to releasing another 20 women and children over the next 2 days. We would, of course, hope to see the pause extended further, and that will depend upon Hamas continuing to release hostages.
U.S. President Joe Biden also released a statement stressing that related parties would take full advantage of the pause in fighting to increase the amount of humanitarian aid moving into Gaza. Biden also vowed to continue U.S. efforts to build a future of peace and dignity for the Palestinian people. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres described the extension as hopeful, but warned that it still does not give enough time to meet humanitarian needs in Gaza.
It's a glimpse of hope and humanity in the middle of the darkness of war, knowing that even with that additional amount of time, it will be impossible to satisfy all the dramatic needs of the population in Gaza.
On the 4th day of the truce on Monday, the Israeli military confirmed the release of an additional 11 Israeli hostages. Qatar's foreign ministry said the hostages include 3 French citizens, 2 German citizens, and 6 Argentinian citizens. Over the first 3 days of the truce, Hamas released more than 50 hostages, mostly women and children. Israel freed over 100 Palestinians from prison. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
It's now less than 24 hours before voting takes place in Paris to decide the host of the 2030 World Expo. Now, with a close race expected down to the final day, the South Korean government is doing all it can to garner any last-minute votes. Our Lee Seung-ja has more.
Busan is ready. It's the theme of Busan's campaign to bring the 2030 World Expo to the southeastern port city, and the message the South Korean delegation is trying to deliver to the voting members of the Bureau International des Expositions. The delegation led by South Korean Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and business leaders are making a last-minute pitch in Paris before the voting takes place in the city on Tuesday. Many expect a very close race until the very last day, with Saudi Arabia's Riyadh in the lead so far. However, the South Korean government is hoping that if the Saudi capital cannot receive the 2/3 of the votes it needs to win, it will lead to a runoff vote where South Korea could potentially take a large chunk of the Rome votes to win the bid. If 2/3 of all 182 member countries, totaling more than 122 votes, are obtained in the first round, the winner will be announced. It may be a two-way race despite Rome, Italy being one of the candidates, as Italian media outlet La Repubblica reported that the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni did not take part in the General Assembly in the French capital. Ahead of the secret vote, each candidate country will also be given time for a final 20-minute presentation. Former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is said to be one of the speakers representing Korea. And according to officials, Prime Minister Han is pushing to highlight the country's vision to transform the World Expo into a platform addressing humanity's challenges, including war and conflict, the digital divide, and climate change. The results of the vote will be announced sometime between midnight and 1 a.m. Wednesday, Korea Standard Time. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
So all that's left now is the running candidates' fifth and final presentations ahead of the voting. Then there'll be a secret ballot using electronic voting, which shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Our Lee Eun-hee tells us more.
The host city of the World Expo 2030 will be selected on Tuesday by the member states of the BIE at its 173rd General Assembly held in France. The meeting is scheduled to start at 9 in the morning with Expo progress reports. Then in the following order, the Republic of Korea's Busan, Italy's Rome, and Saudi Arabia's Riyadh will give their fifth and final presentations on their Expo projects for about 20 minutes each. Following this, the 182 member states will cast their sole votes for the World Expo 2030 host city. A candidate must get 2/3 of the votes cast to be selected outright. If no candidate achieves this target, there will be a second round of voting after the third-placed candidate is eliminated, and the winner of a simple majority will be selected. The voting is scheduled for 4 p.m. local time, midnight on Wednesday in South Korea. Shortly after the voting is completed, the results will be revealed through the BIE's official account on X, formerly known as Twitter. Professor Lee Shin-hwa from Korea University shared with Arirang News her hopeful speculations on what message the final presentation should convey at this stage of the bid. Although Riyadh's bid, backed with a budget of over 7 billion euros, will not be easy to beat, Professor Lee said that she hopes Busan's representatives will give inspiring speeches and share the city's hopeful energy with others.
I'm hoping that Busan will be able to show its convening power to other candidates through its own success story in terms of economic, political, and cultural development. Events like expos act as a learning platform where countries share their unique potential and hold a national discourse. I believe Busan is a perfect place to be a bridge for other cities to share their success stories and vision.
Amid growing interest in who will be on stage for the final presentation, internationally influential individuals are expected, with people anticipating mentions of BTS to Ban Ki-moon, the former UN Secretary General. Lee Eun-hee, Arirang News.
The Olympics, World Cup, and the World Expo are three major international events. Now, will South Korea be able to become the seventh nation in the world to have hosted all three by becoming the host of the 2030 World Expo? For more, we turn to Professor Samuel Richards this morning. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Professor Richards, what do you think South Korea has done well to really appeal Busan's suitability as the host ahead of Riyadh and Rome? What do you think?
Well, you know, what Korea has done well is become an economic and technological miracle over the course of the past 60 to 70 years. And that's what it's done well. And then managed to share its fascinating culture with the rest of the world. And this has been the foundation of Korea's soft power. And there's nothing more valuable than soft power when it comes to the bid for World Expo 2030. You cannot put a price on that. But if we want to get specific, Korea has proposed an incredibly forward-thinking Expo 2030. And Korea's proposal is grounded in giving countries around the world access to some of the most important Korean businesses and technologies. And essentially saying, hey, would you like to see your country follow the path that our country has followed? And you can take the steps in moving in this direction. So follow us. We're going to show you how. And then, you know, you have celebrities who have brought a great deal to this campaign. But, you know, in the end, support for something like this is going to come down to economics and not culture. But the celebrities and people being involved are extremely important because they are the face of a nation. in different ways.
Definitely. Also, the faces of the soft power you just mentioned. Now, on top of that, President Yoon Suk-yeol has been out on a diplomatic run, holding summit talks with the leaders of around 100 countries for the past year and a half. Now, that must have helped to tout Busan as the most, appropriate host city. That probably has helped a lot as well, right?
Yeah, so there's nothing like one-on-one conversations with world leaders and their immediate staff. And this has been happening for many months, but in particular the past several weeks. I saw this in Paris when I was there, and I had the opportunity to speak with numerous diplomats and their staffers on a variety of issues in a variety of countries. And I had the opportunity to ask them what was important to them when it came to World Expo 2030 and what they wanted to see the host country offer. And I received a variety of responses, but what I saw was the importance of speaking to people one-on-one. And so, the other day I watched a video of President Yoon's dinner with King Charles in England, and I was struck by how valuable it is to see the Korean president engage world leaders in this way. It puts Korea in a certain kind of global spotlight, much like the state dinner that he had at the White House earlier this year. It's extremely valuable for a bid like this.
Definitely. Professor Richards, I do have to point out, though, South Korea was a little behind in joining the race, which is why it appears that Saudi has already persuaded so many countries in Africa and the Pacific Islands. Then what is South Korea's last chance, do you think, to really turn the tables?
Well, okay, so the fact that Saudi Arabia might appear to have already convinced a number of nations to support the Saudi bid probably has little to do with the fact that Korea was behind in joining this race, and perhaps more with the fact that the Saudis are likely making promises to other nations, promises that proclaim support for one thing or another. I have no idea what those might be, but I can imagine. But what Korea is promising is to showcase one of the most forward-thinking international events that the world has ever seen. And Korea is a nation that's built on technology. The Koreans themselves have developed and moved forward in the world. It's Korean-built technology. It's the country. Korea did not sell some natural resource on the global market and then purchase technology from other countries around the world. Korea paid for everything that Korea is with brains and sweat as their most important natural resource. So, if nations can look past short-term promises and look at longer-term possibilities, then I think that we'll see, certainly, if Korea doesn't win, we'll see a runoff, which I think will be in Korea's favor.
Definitely so much to offer from technology and culture. As I mentioned earlier, if Busan does become the host, South Korea will become the 7th country in the world to have hosted all 3 of the biggest global events, including the Olympics and the World Cup. Now, what would that mean? What significance does it hold for Korea and its national status even?
Well, okay, so here's how I would respond to that. Even if Korea does not win the World Expo bid, it's still significant that in my lifetime, Korea has gone from being a small, poor, debtor nation to one of the world's most powerful and advanced societies. So that it has hosted any of these international events in such a short period of time, in terms of its economic development, is far more monumental than being able to say that it hosted all 3. And I think it's important to keep this in mind and remember that Korea has already won in this competition. Korea is a leading global nation. It will continue to be long into the future. And in this sense, Korea has won.
Definitely. All right, Professor Richards, thank you so much for your time and your insightful comments this morning. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. Be well and good luck. Let's hope for the best.
A UN official has called North Korea's recent spy satellite launch a serious threat to aviation and maritime traffic. Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific, Khaled Kirari, made the remarks during a UN Security Council session on the launch on Monday. South Korea, the U.S. and others condemned the launch as a violation of UN Security Council resolutions, banning the regime from any launch using ballistic missile technology. But the session failed to produce any joint statement due to opposition from China and Russia. At the session, North Korean ambassador to the UN, Kim Sung, defended the launch as part of the North's sovereign right, adding, "Is the U.S. launching a satellite with a balloon or a catapult, if not with a rocket?" South Korean ambassador to the UN, Hwang Jung-guk, said that Pyongyang is now almost mocking the Security Council. North Korea says its Mallikyung-1 military reconnaissance satellite took pictures of the White House and the Pentagon. According to the North state-run media on Tuesday, leader Kim Jong-un received the photographs from the National Aerospace Technology Administration on Monday and Tuesday. It added that its leader also received images of Norfolk Naval Base, Newport News Shipyard, and an airfield in the U.S. state of Virginia. The North says it has taken images of major military bases in South Korea and the U.S., but has not made any public. And following the North's announcement to terminate the 2018 Inter-Korea military agreement, North Korea is now rebuilding its guard posts and bringing back heavy firearms along the border, which had been taken down under that military pact. Our Lee Kyung-eun has the details.
The South Korean military has detected that North Korea has recently been working to restore its guard posts in the demilitarized zone, right after it announced last week that it will restore all military measures and terminate the September 19th Inter-Korean military agreement.
North Korea declared the complete abolition of the September 9th military agreement on November 23rd. And since November 24th, the regime has been implementing measures to restore its military activities.
Pictures revealed by the military on Monday showed that North Korea has dispatched soldiers and heavy weapons to restore its surveillance posts near the inter-Korean border. North Korean soldiers were also spotted on guard duty at night. Under the 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement, North Korea destroyed 10 out of its 11 guard posts near the border as part of efforts to reduce tensions. However, restoration efforts are now being seen at all 11 guard posts. The military added that North Korea's provocations have worsened near the maritime border as well, as the number of open coastal artillery gun posts has significantly increased. South Korea's defense ministry says the military will be fully prepared to immediately implement countermeasures.
We clearly state that our military is closely monitoring North Korea's provocations and is fully prepared to punish North Korea immediately, strongly, and to the end, based on Seoul and Washington's strengthened joint defense posture.
Speaking to reporters on Monday, the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kim Myung-soo, hinted at the possibility of restoring South Korea's guard posts as a corresponding measure, saying that it comes down to how the, quote, enemy decides to act. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol also ordered the chiefs of the Defense Ministry and JCS to maintain a firm military readiness posture so that the citizens can feel secure. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
The number of young people in South Korea is dwindling at a rapid rate as more of them are choosing to stay unmarried or not have children. According to Statistics Korea on Monday, the number of those aged between 19 and 34 is predicted to drop by half by 2050, as over 4 in every 5 of those in that age bracket were unmarried as of 2020. In particular, over 56% of 30 to 34-year-olds were unmarried, 3 times higher than figures recorded in 2000. Back in 1990, young people made up nearly a third of the total population. 30 years later in 2020, there were just over 1/5. By 2050, they are projected to account for just 11%. A fifth of those in this age group are also living alone, with more than half residing in the capital region. Starting next year, foreign workers with E-1 non-professional employment visas will be permitted to work at restaurants here in South Korea. According to the Ministry of Employment and Labor on Monday, the range of industries for E-1 visa holders has been expanded to restaurants, as well as mining and forestry sectors. It has also decided to bring over a record-breaking 165,000 non-professional migrant workers next year, which is 45,000 more this year. Now, this comes amid growing labor shortages in a number of industries. Manufacturing will accept the largest number of non-professional employees at 95,000, followed by agriculture and livestock at around 16,000.
Good morning. I'm Kim Si-young. We now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in New Zealand, where the country's new Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, was sworn into office on Monday. His new government says it plans to repeal the strict tobacco restrictions that were only approved last year. The coalition government was formed last Friday after long negotiations between Luxon's National Party, the Libertarian ACT New Zealand, and Populist New Zealand First. Luxon says his top priority was improving the economy, promising to deliver tax cuts and training more police officers. But it also plans to scrap the banning of cigarette sales next year to anyone born after 2008, a legislation that only passed last year by the previous centre-left government under former Prime Minister Ardern. Now moving over to the US, where the suspect in the shooting of 3 Palestinian-American students in Vermont pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of attempted murder in the second degree on Monday. The 48-year-old suspect, Jason J. Eaton, is accused of shooting the 3 men on Saturday close to the University of Vermont campus following a Thanksgiving holiday gathering. Authorities say the suspect approached the students and fired off at least 4 rounds before fleeing the scene. All 3 remain in hospital, and the U.S. Attorney General said the FBI is investigating whether the shooting was a hate crime. Now moving on, ahead of COP28 climate summit, the World Health Organization published a press release on Monday voicing the urgency of taking climate action to mitigate the impact of climate change on global health. The WHO quoted a 2023 IPCC report that showed nearly half the global population, about 3.5 billion people, are living in areas of high vulnerability to climate change. WHO figures also show that in the past 2 decades, heat-related deaths in the global elderly population of over 65 years have increased by 70%. The WHO said a record number of health ministers will be attending COP28 and that the global health community is demanding a commitment to building resilient health systems, reducing emissions, and prioritizing health. Lastly, in Peru, local authorities on Monday conducted the country's 4th massive illegal drug burn this year. Peruvian Interior Minister Victor Torres commented that they are incinerating around 19,215 kilograms of illicit narcotics, of which more than 50% is cocaine. Torres also announced that in 2023 alone, the Peruvian authorities destroyed 771 drug laboratories, 65 clandestine airstrips, and dismantled 115 criminal organizations in the narcotics trafficking business.
Hello, I'm Lee Ji-hyun with the latest weather updates. We need to brace for a big freeze from today and throughout the rest of the week. The morning started off colder than yesterday and highs also won't rise that much. And on Thursday, we'll see morning temperatures going down to as low as -7 degrees Celsius here in the capital. A dry weather advisory is in place for the East Coast, and a strong wind watch has also been issued in mountainous regions in Gangwon-do Province. So please, fire caution is a must. Afternoon highs should be 3 to 8 degrees lower than yesterday. Seoul tops out at just 3 degrees this afternoon, but not much to complain about for those in Busan and Jeju, topping out at 12 and 13 degrees respectively. We should have more sunshine than clouds today. Meanwhile, bad dust levels in Daegu and Jeju should improve as the day goes on. Then there will be a mix of rain and snow across Korea for the remainder of the week, along with icy cold temperatures. So please take well care. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.